Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining me today, where we will be looking at a declassified CIA document about flying saucers and UFO reports. It says that this magazine is designed to acquaint you with those cases which, by virtue of the evidence, the reliability of the citers, and the body of supporting scientific data, tend to establish that such aerial phenomena do exist and should be taken seriously, given serious attention and investigation, as well as intelligent treatment by the press. It is all here, the sense and nonsense, the speculation and the theories, compiled to prepare you in the event that today's UFOs will be tomorrow's next door neighbors. And I'm going to skip ahead and just start reading a little bit. There is a story in here that I'd like to start with. So it says Pretoria, South Africa, September 1965. Two policemen, Koos de Klerk and Jacques Lem, out on routine call on asphalt highway, saw what appeared to be a sea of flames ahead of them. 10 seconds later, a top-shaped object took off at tremendous speed and disappeared in the northwest. They, they heard no noise but saw jets of flame spurting from two openings on the underside of the object. Examining the road, they found a circular area, 6 feet in diameter, still burning, and grass scorched on both sides of the road. Samples of the asphalt were examined by a technician in the Public Works Department in Pretoria, who said a gasoline fire could not possibly have caused the burning of the road surface. Perhaps most significant and certainly most aggravating is the common occurrence of electromagnetic effects in those areas where UFOs are sighted. Single cars, blocks of houses, and sometimes whole areas have suffered severe caprices of current when UFOs were overhead. The disturbance may be reflected in no more than a stalled motor or heavy static on the radio. But in Hammond, Indiana, in 1957, while police chased a UFO, there was a TV blackout in the city. And in 1963, in Australia, at the same time, an unidentified object danced over the town of Wonthaggi, and TV interference was recorded in 3 towns. There was a city light failure in Rome, Italy, in 1958. At the same time, a UFO passed over the city, and in Brazil in 1959. The automatic keys at a power station flipped off as a UFO was spotted over the trunk line. After the object had passed, the power station functioned normally. These are a few of the instances, and serious consideration is still being given by some students of the power line theory that UFOs play a role in the disastrous blackouts along the eastern seaboard in November 1965. And then it goes into accounting UFOs being tracked onto radar. And there are a lot of accounts spanning from the 1950s through the 1960s. And radar experts admit scope is as susceptible to illusion as is the eye, but have picked up some strange blips. So, let's see. speaks of, do astronomers give credence to UFOs? So it says the experience of Professor Walter N. Webb, chief lecturer on astronomy at Charles Hayden Planetarium in Boston, who described the yellow glow that undulated over the hills at the south end of Silver Lake in Michigan in 1951, is another example of the trained eye confronted with an unidentifiable object. To the experienced astronomer, the wavy path ruled out planes and planets, and existing conditions ruled out inversion effect of ground-based lights. The professor's conclusion: a UFO. To further substantiate the conviction of reputable astronomers that UFOs do exist, there is the account of Dr. Clyde Tombaugh and his experience in 1949. Dr. Tombaugh, discoverer of the planet Pluto, was at his Las Cruces, New Mexico home when he saw a cigar-shaped object silhouetted against the sky. He could make out a row of yellow lighted openings, giving the impression of portholes or windows running from front to back. In a letter to Richard Hall, Dr. Tombaugh said these illuminated rectangles maintained a fixed position in respect to each other, which supported his impression of solidity. I was really petrified with the astonishment, he wrote, and in an article for Life magazine he stated that in all his long years of sky watching he had never seen the equal of this remarkable craft. And then it has a photo of the cigar-shaped object. Is in frequent sighting. This over Anaheim, California in 1957 flickered with reddish light. So then it says, starts getting into what do air pilots have to say about all this? And I'm sure they've had their experience of dealing with odd objects in the sky. So it says jet crewmen sent up over Capitol in 1952 to scout UFOs seen twice over Washington, D.C. So yeah, they'd see something on the radar, probably end up sending someone to go check it out. And in this magazine, there's also a story of a pilot who's chasing a UFO and encounters some strange happenings. So, pilots are more certain of their sightings than others. Here to swear to pinkish pancake object. So, let's see if I can find the story where it tells about the pilot who's chasing after one. So if you wanted to try and find this document, it's like a CIA FOIA website where you can look up CIA documents. A concise, convincing, and provocative report on saucers was submitted to Project Blue Book in 1954 by Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hedrick, USAFR senior pilot, and later confirmed by letter in a brief description to NICAP, which reports it to the UFO evidence. Page 25, in the same outline the colonel presented. 1. Saucers exist. I saw 2. 2. They are intelligently controlled or operated. evasive tactics, formation, flight, hovering flight. 3. They are not propelled on any thermodynamic principle, no contrails, while jet intercept aircraft left heavy ones. Number 4. They are mechanisms rather than hallucinations, optical illusions, natural phenomena. The Colonel's evaluation. Number 5. They are not U.S. secret weapons, for if they were, many contracts I am now working on would be dropped. Also, they would not fly outside military test reservations. Number 6. They are not Russian for similar reasons. Russians have complained about their flying over their borders. They would not risk malfunction over our territory. Number 7. I presume they are extraterrestrial. Number 8. Provided they are interstellar navigation would likely present little more complication than navigation within our solar system. Therefore, discussion on whether or not planets in the solar system are capable of supporting life is not material. Judging from all evidence I have read, personal contact has not yet been established either on the ground or by radio transmissions. So that was from the senior pilot Richard Hendrick. And then it tells us that it has these National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, a report of unidentified flying objects. So they had this like sheet where you could fill out your name and tell your story about what you saw, for how long you saw it, describe the type of lights or type of day it was, all the kinds of detail. So they did have like a reporting system on this. Whenever somebody saw something, they could fill out one of these forms. And then it says, we're going to get into the next chapter here, 5 that will curl your hair. I just love the graphics on this. So it looks like they're detailing a story from a farmer. So it says a dumbbell-shaped foot imprint suggested a waddling step rather than the stiff-legged gait of a robot. A heavy weight had made the clear impressions. Investigators were skeptical of their value as evidence. That's one of the excerpts of one of the photos here. So, Air Force investigators examined the scene of the incident, went over the ground with Geiger counters, and could find no burnt matches or evidence that lighting had struck or that fire had deliberately been set. They took the machete and the cap for laboratory evidence of scorching that could have been achieved by pressing with a hot iron. But there also were tiny black burns that could not be explained in this fashion. But the most convincing evidence that the Scoutmaster had indeed been a victim of a nightmare experience was contained in some sample grass clumps taken from the scene. The grass itself was undamaged, but the roots were charred. See, how does that happen? This startling evidence in support of the Scoutmaster's story. The only way it could have been faked would have been to heat the earth from underneath to 300 degrees. And how do you do this without using big, cumbersome equipment and disturbing the ground? You can't. So let's see. The Air Force wrote the light off as a meteor, the monster as a clump of shrubbery given spooky shape by a boy overstimulated imagination. The glowing eyes of those of an owl, moreover. See how they just easily, explain, oh yeah, you're just seeing stuff, you just got overactive imagination. And then it says, one of the deep round impressions found after third visit to Wekiwachi Springs. Site of a spacecraft visit. It's like where the landing gear dug into the ground there. That'd be pretty odd to see where this random hole came from. So let's see. Let's go a little bit further. There's lots of accounts in this, people's stories. Oh, well, this one looks cool. There's like alien writing. So, of course, the Air Force denies that such an incident occurred. So, at the same time that footprints were found, four deep circular impressions, such as might have been left by a landing gear of a craft, were located and photographed. The consensus is that the October visit, with its accompanying finds, was definitely a hoax perpetrated by local publicity seekers. There are some who believe the March 31st sighting did take place and that evidence exists to verify the near collision with the Air Force jet. Such evidence has not been released. There are many who accept that the first encounter could be a possibility. With the characteristic thoroughness, the APRO organization deciphered the note message in its entirety in the belief that no piece of evidence should be dismissed without careful scrutiny, regardless of dubious aspects attached to the experience. The message in toto ran, Planet Mars. Are you coming home soon? We miss you very much. Why did you stay away too long? Attention is drawn to the last sentence, which suggests that the writer was not too conversant with the English language. Previously, the announcement had been made. That the two notes appeared to have been penned by different writers. That's cool. They like deciphered alien language. Hieroglyphs were deciphered in part by Army intelligence, said to be the work of amateurs, printed on tissue thin paper made of fibers in common use throughout the world. So they're saying that might have been a hoax. See, that'd be tough trying to deal with people just pushing corn over in a field with a board and a stick trying to get publicity. Then it goes into like the flight of a bat. Silent, glowing, undulating. It was sighted first by officers aboard Brazilian Navy ship, photographed by a professional photographer. So they have all kinds of evidence of sightings. It is glittering as it comes into view over the sea, reflected sunlight, its own light, and it gave off a green vapor as it headed for a high peak on Gallo Crest. Yeah, some of these images so old looking. Then in this photo, it says, when it reappeared from behind the peak, it was lower, larger, and flying the opposite direction so fast that the next two shots were lost. And these guys were like clocking it, watching it, taking photos of it. Then it says the last shot was as the UFO seemed to stop in midair, and then it took off with terrific speed and disappeared into the horizon. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Just like on their vessel, kind of following it. Then all of a sudden you just see it stop, and then pew, it's gone. Then as you go a little further, then it says, I'm still climbing. On Project Blue Book is the account of an early sighting fatality that has baffled UFO historians since news of it first flashed to a shocked public in 1948 with the words F 51 and Captain Mantell destroyed chasing flying saucer. Oh, this is it right here. The death of the death and the puzzling circumstances surrounding it are referred to today as the Mantell incident. But at the moment of the first sighting, 1:20 p.m. January 7th, 1948, Captain Thomas Mantell was on a ferry mission more than a half an hour away from knowledge of the tragedy which fate had in store for him. A bright disc-shaped object had been seen by the tower crew at Goldman Field. Unable to identify it, the crew brought the object to attention of the base operations officer. Base intelligence officer had eventually the base commander and the flight commander, Captain Mantell, flew over the field at 2:45 p.m. and was requested to investigate the UFO, which by this time had drawn the attention of the queries from people in Maysville and Owensboro, Connecticut, I think, or maybe it's Kentucky, several of whom described the object as circular, as much as 300 feet in diameter and moving at a pretty good clip. Mantell, accompanied by two wingmen, all flying F 51, set off in pursuit at 10,000 feet. Mantell called the tower to report, I see something above and ahead of me, and I'm still climbing. The other two wingmen traveled off at 15,000 feet and turned back. Neither they nor Mantell were outfitted for flights requiring oxygen, and any height above 15,000 feet could be disastrous. They had tried to contact Mantell by radio, but without success, and he was still climbing. His last words to the tower were, I'm going to 20,000 feet. A few moments later, 90 miles from the tower, Mantell's plane was seen to have exploded in midair. It disintegrated before it struck the ground, and the answer as to what had prompted Mantell's last words, I'm still climbing, despite the knowledgeable pilot's awareness that death could result, was forever sealed in his lifeless body. In Major Donald Kehoe's book, Flying Saucers from Outer Space, it was reported that The Air Force refused to release photos of the wreckage and the body out of respect for the feelings of Mantell's relatives. But the secrecy surrounding the crash set off a flood of rumors that the body had been pierced by a mysterious ray, and even more sensationally, that no body had been found at all. Mantell had been spirited away by unknown spacemen. Well, these rumors were quickly scotched at by the ATIC, and its report was filed with what then was known as Project Sign and is today Project Blue Book. It reads, it is the ATIC opinion that Captain Mantell lost consciousness due to oxygen starvation and the aircraft being trimmed continued to climb until increasing altitude caused a sufficient loss of power for it to level out. The aircraft then began to turn to the left due to the torque, and as the wing dropped, so did the nose until the aircraft was in a tight diving spiral. The uncontrolled descent resulted in excessive speed, causing the aircraft to disintegrate. It is believed that Captain Mantell never regained consciousness. This is born out of the fact that the canopy lock was still in place after the crash. Discounting any attempt to abandon the aircraft, the UFO was in no way directly responsible for the accident. However, it is possible that the excitement caused by the object was responsible for this experienced pilot conducting a high altitude flight without the necessary oxygen equipment. Ooh, see, that's a tough one. But if they have no idea where his remains are, who's to say that he wasn't spirited away? Then it continues on and says, maybe I've seen the devil. I just love these old school black and white photos. So it looks like there's a story of a man in New Mexico who had some experiences of a third kind. So let's see. It's always, yeah, a lot to do with the police running into these things too. So I skipped a little bit ahead and I'm just checking out this other photo where it says closer examination revealed unidentifiable white object and what appeared to be two small adults who apparently, startled by Zamora's appearance, took off with ear-splitting roar. Huh. So this guy encounters two beings also. So it says this Zamora guy was the sole witness, so it's kind of hard to just go off of his word. Hmm. So yeah, maybe they really tried to keep a lid on all of the information from getting out because they were afraid of all of these people looking for publicity to take that information and then twist it. And, huh. So there's a diagram of what looks like could be where the spacecraft had landed, where it shows a couple impressions, these circular indentations, and there was burned areas on the grass, clumps, and mesquite bush. So yeah, apparently wherever these things are, also some kind of heat source creating these burnings. So you definitely don't want to get too close to one of these if you ever see one. So then there's another photo of this guy in his car. The patrolman raced to his car's brilliant phenomenon took off in a burst of blue flame. He tried to alert headquarters to watch for the object, believed headed in that southwesterly direction. It says one youngster was said to have been severely burned at the same time he sighted a smoking metallic object that settled above his head. See, yeah, that would suck. Get severely burned from checking one of these things out. Okay, then next it gives, there's a diagram on this and preceding page prepared by Frank Salisbury, Plant Science Department, Utah State University. Here's the initial sighting of the object X from position A, then in closer inspection B, near where the dynamite shack. Okay. So they definitely go into depth about this incident. Perfect, precise flight maneuvers. Try to get to just the juicy bits. Then it gets into the missing hours between Indian Head and Ashland. There's like a map here. So during 2 lost hours someplace in the 35-mile stretch of the White Mountains, Barney and Betty Hill underwent an experience of such chilling dimension that only hypothesis could bring it back to focus. Okay, yeah, I've heard of this story. That's cool they have that in there as well. Some stories that I haven't seen before. So I think for most people are pretty aware of the Betty Barney Hill incident. But maybe there's some other details that are in here that we aren't aware of. Definitely a good one looking into. There's nice pictures, there's some good information. So yeah, it was like their car was basically spirited away for 2 hours and then brought back, and no way to explain how they got from where they were. Okay, so the flap in Michigan. Several reported sightings in southern Michigan alerted serious and not so serious observers to the possibility of a sky show. One man played a fiddle, hoping to recall the UFO's previous night. Another beeped out pi code on his car horn. Most observers solemnly studied the sky, hoping for a repeat performance. So these people actually seen one night, and then the next night we're like, yo, let's do that again. Alright, then they have the diagram here. Looks like a saucer. This composite drawing, put together from what several of the Dexter, Michigan sighters described, led some to think that marsh gas was not an acceptable explanation. Quilted was term chosen to designate pitted. So yeah, they're trying to tell people, oh yeah, no, it's just that fog gas, just messing with your brain. And it says Michigan police official took this photo of what he suspected was an unidentified flight object. During the excitement, the photo was given wide coverage. I mean, there's not a whole lot to see right there. Just black and white and a couple dots there. And then, so it was going down in Michigan. People, they were looking out their windows. They were excited. They're like, hey, did you see that thing? I saw, oh man. They just get together at each other's houses and have a watch party. They had a 4-hour vigil, taking notes and drawing sketches of the glowing phenomena that was later to be dismissed as marsh gas. Yeah, watch out. Because, that's where all the UFO stuff happens, is near swamps. Okay. So this one gives a video, or a photo rather, of this windmill that I had put on a previous video. And I couldn't tell what was going on, but in this it gives a little excerpt. So it says, while the controversy was at its peak in Michigan, this photo was released showing what was purported to be a UFO that flew over Hillsdale County in 1965. So, man, they must have just not had the best cameras back then. But they were trying. If only they had better cameras back then. Way cooler photos, man. Okay, let's see. So then next it starts to go into this press conference. So they had a press conference stemming from a natural statewide curiosity. Dr. Hynek identified photo taken by the police officer as a time exposure of the crescent moon and of planet Venus. Oh yeah, that's just the moon. That's just Venus. I don't know. Nothing to see here, fellas. He's a doctor. Listen to what he's got to say. Okay. Then if you go forward a little bit, then we got some infograph about sun and the time that it takes to get around the sun. There's certain rings and it tells you how many years or days. That's pretty cool. It says, hello out there. As you read this, powerful radio beams are flashing from the Earth to Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani. These two star systems, light years across the vault of space, are believed to contain intelligent beings capable of communicating with man. Oh yeah, see that's when they were sending the signals out to space. Hoping to get a signal back. So then it has some other infographs. It shows all the way out towards Pluto. And then talks about how light traveling from one end of this vast aggregate of stars, star clouds, and interstellar dust, planets, comets, and possibly quasars, to the other takes like 100,000 years. From here, we could move out across intergalactic space to Andromeda, the nearest of billions of galaxies like our own Milky Way. If you visualize the nearest galaxy reduced to a tiny whirling disk of brilliance about the size of a dime, then picture another dime disk 3 feet away from that, and an entire series of dime sized galaxies equidistantly spaced, stretching for 3 miles in all directions, you'll have an idea of the size of the known universe. Yeah, that's pretty good analogy there. So, at light speed or faster, moving away at a greater velocity than their light can send back to us. Therefore, we will never see their light. It naturally follows that galaxies exist beyond detection of any instruments man can devise. Such island universes may contain hundreds of billions of advanced planetary and interplanetary or interstellar civilizations. But these galaxies are lost forever to each other. By almost any measure, the situation is paradoxical. The loss is incomprehensible. Today, the skies hold the challenge for adventure that the seas held for our ancestors. Yeah, I like that one. See, these people they were informing people back then. Let's see if you get your hands on one of these magazines somehow. In the past half century, it seemed astounding that men might not be the only intelligent life form in the universe. Now we have found another one, right here on Earth, the dolphin. Okay. So you can tell by some of the old words that they use, some of the concepts. Definitely some writing from back in the 1960s, 1950s. And if you go a little more forward, it starts to talk about if you can't cite them, coin them. Start slowly, preferably on water's edge. Strong right arm helps firm grip on garbage lid handle. Let her fly. So it looks like there's some people. They're just like throwing discs into the air, then taking a photo of it and saying it's a UFO. Man. See, that's what you could do with these old freaking cameras because they couldn't really see very well. I could make my own UFO. Watch me throw this frisbee in the air, take a photo of it. It's all black and white, and no one could really tell the difference anyway. So that's pretty funny. They do have some pretty interesting photos, though. There must have been all kinds of really cool looking photos back in the day. It came like a craze. Everyone wanted a camera. So it says coming in for a charge. Deep red cigar shaped object from which came small disc that sped toward ground, stopped over power lines, extended pipe like object 2 lines, and remained there several seconds before withdrawing object and speeding back to cigar shaped UFO. Hmm. That's pretty interesting. So that one's more like an illustration. Huh. See, that would be interesting. You see, like this UFO hovering over a power line. What's that thing doing? Just needed to recharge. Just needed to plug my phone in real quick. But that's crazy what it was saying about those blackouts being related to UFO sightings. That's pretty interesting. I never heard of that before. The coincidence of power blackouts with UFO sightings has been too numerous over the years for investigators to dismiss the relationship. Many of them had examined the possibility that UFOs were recharging from Earth based power sources. Whatever the ultimate truth is, there are a remarkable number of sightings during the course of which cars, radios, car motors, TV sets, city lights, and in some instances, entire areas have been infected to the extent of a total blackout. Wow. See, I never thought of it like that. You'd think they would just be like disrupting, but that they're actually absorbing the energy. That's crazy. It says photos taken by professional draftsman Helio Aguilar on way to HQ of 6th Military Region in area called Piatin. He took 4 photos of strange object performing looping maneuvers over ocean. 3 show disc-shaped blurred surface. 4th show only cupola. Photos taken in 1959. Well, that one's actually pretty good quality. You can kind of see it at a different angle there. That was pretty interesting. So I know I might be skipping a little bit further ahead of where you are. Hoping that I'm on track still. But you can definitely go back and look at this document for yourself if you want. I can leave the description of the link down below. The anatomy of a what's it. See, this is where I was trying to get to. Let's see. So this one, it looks like they give like a readout of people's sightings, where it gives the time and place of the sighting, the duration, the number of observers, the type of observers, the number of objects, and the observer reliability. Shape, dimensions, color, sound, and altitude, along with the speed and tactics. So that's pretty cool. I think there's a couple of these. Type of observer, male, 31. Other, unknown. Observer reliability, unknown. Shape, like a mushroom or light bulb. Dimensions, about 75 to 80 feet in height. 25 feet in diameter at top, 10 feet at bottom. Color, metallic gray with red-orange glow or on near side and blue glow on far side. Sound, similar to a vacuum cleaner. Altitude, about 4 feet off the ground. Speed, hovering, then moved off horizontally. Tactics, object was observed hovering for about 25 seconds before it moved off horizontally and disappeared. Comment, observer said he first noted the object after his car stalled. He told an investigation officer that he thought the object was a solid object and thought it was an air vehicle belonging to the Air Force. Another witness said that his car also stalled and he saw the object. The Air Force says possible causes include mirage and a descending weather balloon. But since no conclusive evidence can establish the identity of the object, it is carried as unidentified. So let's see. Let you go further. There is a blow up of one panel of strip taken in 1952. Huh. Then there's an original film strip where it has the picture of a UFO on it. So, I mean, back in the day, they were doing really good at recording all this, so there's probably just documents and documents of recordings that they have on file since all the way back since the 1945. Yeah, that's pretty intense. So there was these one spotted in Sicily in 1951. There's these unexplained disc shapes turned up on negative. So they couldn't see it in the normal photos, but in the negatives for some reason. Yeah, a lot of these photos, it's hard to tell, but some of them do look really good. One of several shots of object 30 feet in diameter, 8 feet thick, taken by a highway investigator in California who is no believer in flying saucers, swears to its authenticity. Well, I think there was like a heightened activity back in those days because of the development of the atomic bomb. Maybe it has something to do with it, with the Manhattan Project, and that's something that you could attribute to the high strangeness in those times. But I mean, yeah, if this is happening all over the place, people are seeing this all the time. I mean, hard to cover it up all the time and say, oh yeah, it's just a balloon, just it's, some kind of swamp gas, or you're just seeing things. Overactive imaginations getting to you, People can only believe that for so long after seeing so much of it. So that's why we're going to try to bring some more of this type of information to you and unseal the classified files. Let's see if I can find another good story here. Okay. So it looks like I might be a bit ahead of where you guys are in the infographics, but I was just giving you a little bit of the information that I saw that stood out to me. So, I mean, you can really go back in and read more of the document in depth if you like, but let's see. So you get to the part where it talks about commonly reported UFO types. It says these basic shapes, generalized from hundreds of UFO reports, represent with reasonable accuracy virtually all UFOs that have been reliably described in detail. Extraneous details have been eliminated. sweet. I mean, they got so there's the UFO shape on the left, and then on the top right it says bottom view. Then there's the bottom angle, and then there's a side view. So the first one they start with is the flat disc. And then the second one is a domed disc, where the first one looks more like a lens, and the second one's more like a helmet or like a hat shaped. Then there's like number three, which was a Saturn disc, so it has a double dome. So this one has kind of like a ring around the circle. Then there's the hemispherical disc, which is like a half of a circle or a mushroom shaped half moon. Then number five would be the flattened sphere, where it just looks like a squished circle, sometimes with a peak. Then number six would be spherical, with a ball of glowing light, just like a metallic ball looking. Then there's this elliptical or football shaped craft. Then there's a triangular shaped craft or teardrop looking. And then finally, there would be the cylindrical or cigar shaped craft. So that's cool how they have it broken down there for you. And it even tells the dates and who sighted them. So, I mean, they're pretty in depth for just a magazine. It's like some kind of informational pamphlet that people who are encountering these things could have a more understanding of how to talk about it. Probably to be like, oh yeah, I saw this object. Well, what did it look like? Pretty interesting. So it says that unidentified aerial objects can come in many forms, a variety of colors, and can maneuver in a myriad of ways, as has been attested to by those who have witnessed the phenomena. A frequently used description is football shaped, but this has strong contenders in two saucers, lip to lip and mushroom shaped. Some are cigar shaped. Many observers have been impressed by the soundlessness of the craft, while others have mentioned buzzing or beeping noises. There have been testimony to windowed craft and to many without apparent openings. The wide diversity in description has prompted some skeptics to dismiss the lot as fragments of the imagination. It has prompted others to point out that not all interplanetary craft need to be controlled by the same intelligence or released on the same mission. And serious students of UFOs acknowledge that many sightings can indeed be weather balloons, satellites, reflections, constellations, and other commercial or private aircraft. In interests of establishing the many shapes, colors, and behavior patterns in which the UFOs may show themselves. This magazine has enlisted the services of its Dayton, Ohio correspondent, who has visited the offices of Project Blue Book at Wright Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton Air Force Headquarters for reports on thousands of UFO sightings under the direction of physicist Major Hector Quintanilla. Here, given access to the nearly 11,000 reports, he made a selection of some of the more current sightings that point to the numerous ways in which a UFO may manifest itself. He has included the time and place of the sightings and the type and number of persons who made it. So, man, see, that's like a pretty big undertaking for this guy. Just to comb through thousands of those reports, man. But that's cool. So I'll just read one of these excerpts for you. So, the observers were viewing the stars through a telescope when all of a sudden the object popped into view like a lightning bug. It turned and had a slight zigzag motion and appeared after 16 to 17 seconds. So the type of observer on this one was a sheriff. And he says that it was a triangular shaped object with a bright purple light on the left end and smaller, less bright blue lights on the right end. It was about 200 feet wide and 40 to 50 feet thick in the middle, tapering off toward both ends. And it was about 100 feet in the air. So the object was first spotted on the horizon as a bright purple light about 5 or 6 miles away. A blue light appeared out of the purple light. The observers tried to get closer to the light, then slowed almost to a stop to make another observation through binoculars. The lights then started coming toward the witness at rapid speed. The object came up to the pasture next to the highway about 150 feet away. Bright light illuminated the ground, highway, and interior of the patrol car, and one observer felt heat. As observers headed back towards Damon, the object appeared to remain in the same position for about 10 seconds, then moved off in direction originally seen at high speed, arriving at original position. It went straight up in the air and disappeared. It was spotted again later by the same witnesses at the same place. They left the scene because they figured the object would start moving toward them again. See, that'd be crazy if it just starts coming like straight for you. So yeah, this one's pretty infamous one. Where's the trail of lights in the shape of a V? They're just crossing the sky. August 1951. So I can read a little bit about this next part here. So there is no definite answer to many photographs that have been submitted as evidence of UFOs, but there is a steady developing body of opinion that natural phenomena, weather conditions, reflections, and hoaxes cannot be responsible for all of the photos that are submitted in verification of sightings that have been made. Frequently, photographers film aerial phenomena in one section of a state with no knowledge at the time that the same objects are being viewed by witnesses in another section of the same or neighboring states. In many instances, photographers, well aware that their photos are genuine, are reluctant to submit the prints for publication because of the ridicule and charges of fakery that attach to such claims. It is unfortunate that men and women of established integrity are both to announce themselves. Oh, they loathe to announce themselves, since it is only through the cooperative efforts of sighters, photographers, researchers, and scientists that the complete answers will emerge. As enthusiasm and acceptance continue to spread among the more responsible element of our society, it is logical to assume that more and more people will willingly contribute their names and their knowledge to reports and photos of UFO sightings, and in the interest of those devoted to intelligent research, a pox on anyone who participates in a hoax. Like they would just say that. A pox on you. Hope you get the box for trying to spread hoaxes. It's messed up. You don't just wish the pox on people. That's not cool. But yeah, man, there's like a lot of really good photos in here. And even they admit it themselves. They're like, yeah, we can't just keep explaining this stuff off when there's so much evidence. But yeah, there was definitely like a heightened activity back in those days. And maybe people didn't really have phones or the internet. And they spent a lot more time outside and looking at the stars and stuff. But it just makes you wonder, like, the amount of people that could afford to have a camera back then. It's like, how much would a camera even cost back then to have the film or be able to develop it? Or So I bet not a whole lot of people had cameras, but I'm sure as soon as all this photography stuff started taking off, more and more people just getting into taking photos. But yeah, it wasn't until they really figured out how to make color photos that give you a little bit more detail than just black and white all the time. Oh well. So here's an excerpt we got here. In early May 1952, a Brazilian magazine, O Cruzeiro, sent journalist Joao Martins and photographer Ed Keffel on routine assignments to the Barra de Tuaca area near Rio de Janeiro. Late that afternoon, Martins spotted what he thought to be an airplane traveling at great speed. As it neared, he saw the configuration was not of any craft. He yelled to Keffel, "Shoot it!" Keffel focused his Rolleiflex on the object, and in the next 60 seconds, got off this series of 5 remarkable photographs. Some critics have pointed out that shadows on the ground fail to coincide with the shadows on object in one photograph, but as APRO brings to the attention of its audience, Lieutenant Colonel Hughes, U.S. Air Attaché to the American Embassy at Rio, has pronounced them authentic, and APRO's Brazilian investigator Dr. Olavo Fontes pronounces these photos the most sensational photographic sequence of flying disc ever seen, and backs his pronouncement up with official documents from the Brazilian Air Force files. 1961. And it's kind of hard to make out, but yeah, definitely look like some discs up there. Okay, yeah, the fourth and fifth shots do look a lot clearer. Man, see, that would be cool. And then once you get further towards the end, then he starts to talk about who's minding the store. So it says Project Blue Book. The public excitement aroused by a series of UFO sightings in 1947 prompted the Air Force to inaugurate a clearinghouse for such reports and a public information official to announce the conclusions arrived at by air intelligence as to what those UFOs really were. The project was born under the name Sign, later became Grudge, and is known today as Blue Book. Its history has been a stormy one. Private investigative organizations have accused Project Blue Book of concealing information, distorting reports, and dismissing important evidence as irrelevant and misconceived. The Air Force's own consulting scientists have indicated some less than satisfaction with the final conclusions released to the press by Air Force intelligence. Air Force pilots have been quoted as being thoroughly out of patience with the treatment their objective and detailed reports have been given by Project Blue Book and is guiding intelligence. There have been charges that the Air Force knew more than it is revealing, and that its weasel worded reports were an affront to the public's intelligence and an insult to the reputable persons who submitted the reports. There have been suggestions that the Air Force was convinced of the existence of interplanetary craft and had accepted the likelihood of actual landings and of exploratory operations. The acknowledged incidents of dogfights between our own jets and UFOs, plus the unknown occurrences of jets ordered up to intercept these aerial phenomena, lent support to these suggestions. In 1952, Edward Ruppelt was placed in charge of Project Blue Book, His efforts at honest appraisal of the major sightings pitted against the sometimes confusing, sometimes conflicting, and often downright aggravating obstinacy, obstinacy, sorry, of ATIC to accept and or to release for publication the whole story, provide the material for Ruppel's comprehensive, no punches pulled account of his year as chief of Project Blue Book. Yeah. Hear what this Ruppelt guy has to say about it. Because he was running the dang thing. So, Project Blue Book passed through several hands after the consensus in the direction of Ruppelt, later killed in an air crash. Today, it is in the competent hands of Major Hector Quintanilla, who, with the services of a small staff, kept track of UFO sightings that come into Project Blue Book headquarters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. The number of reports has passed 11,000 and is growing at a rate of 1,000 per year as public interest increases. The attacks on the Air Force attitude grow apace, bolstered by the suspicion that air intelligence knows something that it isn't telling us. Are they prompted by the fear to acknowledge the existence of such craft would generate public panic? Are they being overprotected? A sentiment voiced frequently by a curious and interested body of American ufologists is panic schematic. We want to know. It is with a feeling of relief that Project Blue Book turns over the major share of responsibility for appraising UFO reports to the recently established research center at the University of Colorado, financed with a government grant of $313,000. So it sounds like somebody might have taken over this office. Just kind of bought it out. So the APRO, the oldest civilian UFO study group in the world, was set up in 1952 under the dictatorship of L.J. Lorenzen and his wife Coral, dedicated to the premise that aerial phenomena, whether it consists of physical fact or rumor, is important enough to warrant an objective investigation. Since that date, the Lorenzens have devoted their energies to such serious and factual reporting of UFO sightings as to attract the attention, support, and volunteer services of prominent scientists, researchers, photographers, astronomers, and engineers from all over the world. APRO numbers among its representatives Dr. Olavo T. Fontes, Dr. Renee Hardy, Peter Norris, Junichi Takanashi, Costa Ren, and Horacio Gonzalez, Guantamene, and this fine research organization has had the courage to investigate and to report objectively on several sightings that deal with the possibility of UFO occupants, in the belief that no facet of this vast and still largely unexplored area, extraterrestrial life, should be dismissed without in-depth research. APRO concentrates on investigating and analyzing reports of aerial phenomena, and its representatives have provided such well-documented accounts of major incidents that no serious annotator of UFO sightings could function without access to the APRO material. The official publication of the nonprofit organization, the APRO, sent regularly to its extensive membership from APRO headquarters in Tucson, Arizona, is edited by Coral Lorenzen, and who has acknowledged authority on aerial phenomena and who has incorporated some of the most valuable information and interesting theories in her book Flying Saucers. APRO has endorsed without reservation the recently announced research group to be established in the University of Colorado has volunteered its catalog of reports covering 15 years of serious study, documentation, and investigation to the new study group. A gesture Dr. Condon will undoubtedly welcome in view of the esteem in which this privately run organization is held. So, in the end, it says that we hope that your horizons have been broadened. Your desire to probe beyond the known limits of the solar system has been whetted. But even if you remain steadfast in your belief that intelligence starts somewhere east of Capina Grande and ends west of Fresno, and that anything you can't name on site is marsh gas or myth, we have enjoyed having you aboard and hope you have liked the trip. Nice. Watch your step getting off. I like it. So, I mean, they even had some witty writers doing this. Yeah, I mean, the way that one pilot just flew chasing that UFO, and then, man, that's probably one of the crazier stories. Along with all the roots from the grass being burnt from the underside. Okay, now that was pretty cool. So yeah, if you like this content, enjoy my videos, make sure to like and subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you again for watching. And like I said, I will be leaving the description of the article down below. If you want to read this document in depth, feel free to dive into the unknown.